Hello, good evening, welcome to Talk of Sheffield. With me, Simon Thake. We have a special show for you on a Tuesday night. It is very much our Christmas special and a first here on Sheffield Live. Coming up, something extra special. We have Mr. Mike Mistletoe and rapping Jack Frost, yes indeed, performing live for the first time here on Sheffield Live. We'll do that later on. We also have a brilliant guest here in the studio. I'm delighted to say that one of our presenters from Obsessive Compulsive Cleaners from Channel 4, Mr. Vinny Gee, is here in the studio. How are you, Vinny?
I'm very well, thank you.
I need to be on my toes tonight as a presenter here. I feel like I'm being watched. Thanks so much for coming in.
That's not a problem.
So, Obsessive Compulsive Cleaners, a fantastic show on Channel 4. Tell me a little bit how you got involved. Why were you selected? I think I know the answer to this, but...
Well, strangely enough, I got an email through saying, do you have some sort of disorder? Are you compulsive to anything? And I kind of thought about this and I thought, well, as one of my clients stitched me up here, I'm thinking it's a bit of a joke. So I ring up and I say, yeah, I'm a bit like that. And I had a phone interview for about half an hour and they asked several questions about how I get ready in the day and what I do. And then went through some more phone interviews and then was invited down to London.
Your life sounds incredibly stressful. You can't go to a restaurant without stressing about the cutlery, the knives and forks. You're spending, how much are you spending on hand gel and cleaning products on a weekly basis?
On a weekly basis, I've worked it out over a monthly. It's about £600 a month.
What's that on? £600 on?
Yeah, just on cleaning.
Cleaning products?
Cleaning products.
When you came into Sheffield Live Towers tonight, I was so anxious about you using the toilet. I'm incredibly anxious that you're not going to drink from this glass right now.
That is correct.
Is it stressful though?
Well, no, I wouldn't call it stressful. How I now get into an environment, I always are looking around. I can't help that, you know. But I've now controlled it to a certain degree where I try not focus on something too much. I did a radio interview not long ago on BBC Radio, and I got into the room and I looked around, and the host said, "I bet you find it very difficult." Yes, I do, but I've now got it to a level where I can control it.
So you mentioned earlier about one of your clients was the person that perhaps sent the email through to Channel 4. Your client's been, you are in your day job, you're a personal trainer?
I'm a personal trainer.
Okay, and how long have you been doing that for?
I've been a personal trainer now for 8 years. I've been running my own B-Force Fitness now for 5 years.
Well, let's get into that in a bit later, because I think that fits in not very nicely, but you can see why you chose that profession with your own sort of peccadillos and whatnot. Let's go back into more details about... So this email came across. You were interviewed when you went down to London, and I don't know if it was Channel 4 producers were sitting in front of you. Did it take them very long to think, yes, we've got the right guy?
No, not to be honest with you. They were very keen. They were very supportive, and to be honest with you, they're a great team to work with, and I love doing the show.
Talk a bit about your role on the show. What did they select you for originally? What did they say to you? Why do we need you? What did they say?
Well, they kind of... We all have different roles as presenters in the show. And we're a great team and we all support one another. They selected me on a basis where my dog was taken away from me when I was the age of 10. My father one night decides to go out to the woods, get rid of the dog because we can't afford to feed it anymore.
Okay.
So ever since then, it really got to me where I didn't want any more pets. I didn't want to be around pets because, you know, I really cried quite a lot and suffered a lot with it. So when they asked me about, do I like pets? And I said, I have this problem with dogs and this, that, and other. And then next minute, I'm doing a show where I'm helping some guy who's got 6 dogs and 3 cats and helping him to clean up his house, which was a bit of a nightmare.
Because you admitted to me earlier that if you were invited round to a friend's house and there's even a trace of cat hair or dog hair, if a cat jumped on the table, you'd be out of there.
I'd be out. I wouldn't be able to eat there.
Does it affect, I mean, like, I don't know, personal life, family members, you know, friends? Are they reluctant to invite you round for tea?
To be honest,
you've been round for tea. Anyone's recently?
To be honest with you, some of my friends have not invited me around their house because they know how I am, and I think, you know, that's the reason why I've not been invited. To be honest with you, we can go out to restaurants and drink out in pubs and stuff. But no, there's very few who invite me to their houses.
But you're selective about the restaurants you go to?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, and have you ever walked out of a restaurant?
I've walked out of many restaurants.
What did you find?
Just if the knife and fork are not clean, or the table's not clean, or if my eye focuses on, I mean, look here. I can see the dirt on that table. My eyes doesn't take very long.
We tried so hard, Vinny. We really were.
My eyes do pick up things very quickly, and when I've walked into restaurants and I've seen it, I'm sorry, I can't eat.
So your place in Sheffield,
yeah,
absolutely spotless, presumably.
I call it the show home.
The show home. Where are those hard to reach places that the rest of us are just disgusting and leave dusty and untapped? Under
cookers, under washing machines, under dishwashers.
And you're not cleaning those every day or every week, are you?
I've got to be.
Every day?
Yeah.
How long do you spend cleaning on a daily basis?
Well, I have a routine.
Okay.
I go through each room meticulously every other day.
Every other day?
Every other day. So the cycle is I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 rooms.
Okay.
Okay. So they'll get cleaned every other day.
And what have you got in your hand? You've got armed with Hoover, cleaning products, sprays, duster, the works.
Yeah.
And do you go through black bin bags and whatnot? Are you chucking these?
I use quite a lot of black bin bags. Absolutely.
Okay, tell us about this show then. So, when you were first approached by Channel 4, they obviously spotted you with the right person. Do you remember the first house they took you to?
Yes, I do.
The first case. Go on, talk to us about that.
There was 2 guys I went down to in Margate who I got very close to doing the show with them, and I found out. I went on a revisit to their house and really found out, a lot more about them as individuals, about the reasons why they have the issues that they have. So I got a lot from the first show, and working with those 2 guys was amazing. And
did you find that? I mean, we'll play a clip in a sec because it must be hard sometimes for you. I mean, you've given us an indication right now. You must be biting your tongue a lot.
When I got to that house, I could smell something, for example.
Were you halfway down the street by the time you
I had
smelled
to put my handy back to even touch the doorbell.
Okay.
And when he came to the door and he got the dog in his hand, I thought, oh no.
That's lovely. It's a lovely scene.
That's a lovely scene, but not for me. It isn't. So I had to ask him to put handy back on his hands before he could shake my hand.
So do you, for instance, then? That's just made me think. You wouldn't pet a dog, or do you? Are you happy to pet a dog, or
yes.
Are you straight? Do you wear gloves presumably to do?
No. I would pet a dog.
Okay.
But as long as I've got my little friend here,
okay. Straight afterwards.
And that's it. I'm fine. I can deal with that. To be honest with you, one was going out to work, one wasn't going out to work. He was doing some voluntary work, and he just struggled because there was so much needed doing to the house, and they just couldn't get around to doing it, and there wasn't enough time. And I just think there was other underlying issues there, and he just was struggling.
And what's the verdict? What do you do? I mean, do you find it difficult to empathise, or?
I'm not a sympathetic sort of person at all, really, because of living on the streets myself. I know what squalor is, and I don't think that there is a reason for it.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because I'll ask you a bit later on about Sheffield, because you're a Sheffield resident. You say you've lived here 8 years now.
No, yeah.
But actually, you're brought up in Nottingham.
That's correct.
And you were saying, and I've read this about you, that actually a lot of this stems from the fact that you were homeless yourself.
That's correct.
What age was that?
I was age of 15 when my mother put me out on the streets.
Okay, and this was in Nottingham?
This is in Nottingham, just before Christmas, and my birthday. I basically got expelled from school. Basically, I used to run a gauntlet every day. When I used to go to school, I had to go around certain buildings to get away from the kids because I was bullied.
Okay.
Quite a lot. And so therefore, the only way I felt I could stop that from happening was going to school late. I was always late because the other kids would then be in class and I wouldn't get the beatings. To one day me getting late and the deputy head called me down to the office and said, "It's time for you to go." And he grabbed hold of me by the collars of my jacket.
Yeah.
I lost it. They say you kick a dog so many times and it will bite back, and I did. And I didn't hit him, but I went for him. told me that I got to leave school there and then, and I had to go home and tell my mother. I told my mother, and that's when she said, it's time for you to get out on the streets.
She didn't,
she didn't bat an eyelid. I begged and screamed for her to keep me in the house, but she got my sister's brother to grab hold of me and throw me out of the house.
Well, I won't ask you how the streets were, because of course they were horrific, but
yeah.
I mean, how did you cope with that? What were your sort of strategies?
My strategies, first night when I was out on the streets, I slept in the shed, in my mum's shed.
Okay.
There was no lock on it. That was my first night, because I wanted to stay in to the house, because I thought she'd let me in at some time.
Yeah.
But it didn't. Second night I went to stop in that shed. She knew that I was staying in it and put a lock on it.
Okay.
So that's when I wandered the streets and found this old empty house where the builders were at. And I lived in that for 6 months.
And did anyone else know that you were living there?
No.
Or?
No.
Okay.
Because I'd get up very early in the morning. I was up early. I very rarely slept very long, 3 hours, 2 hours. Because I couldn't switch off, because I was so scared of hearing noises. Anything I would hear, I would twitch.
Yeah, of course.
It was like trying to sleep with one eye open, one eye. You can't do it. So sleep was minimal. I stayed in there for 6 months, and then what I did was bounce around all over Nottingham and stayed in empty houses wherever I could find. And I wanted to be a part of a group, because I couldn't cope with being on my own.
I guess that comes with its own dangers, though, as well.
There you go. You touched on that point. Yeah, I got into drugs, fights, burglaries, robberies, you name it. And then got on that perpetual cycle of drugs. The drugs came into it because you spend your time trying to forget about it all and find something to take it away, because it's so rough out there.
And I don't know Nottingham particularly well, and obviously it's not so far from Sheffield, but I know that Nottingham has a problem with gangs, that's for sure.
At that time, Nottingham was one of the third in the country for highest crime rate. The gangs between St Anne's Meadows and Ice and Green, there was shootings and stabbings regularly. And at that time...
And what period are we talking about now?
We're talking about late 70s. Sorry, no. Wrong. 80s, late 80s,
okay.
Early 90s. There was a massive epidemic of drugs in Nottingham, and there was these rival gangs, and going back to it now, it's not there anymore, because I go there every so often to go over it in my head of where I've been to where I am today.
How did you get out of that? And how old are we talking? Because you started at 15.
I lived on the streets for 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
And how did you manage to get out of that?
I managed to get a flat from the council. Okay. And I remember the first day walking into this, they gave me this 3-bedroom flat, which was painted dark blue. It was horrible. Okay. And I remember sitting on the stairs thinking, at least the one good thing was for me that I had a door I could lock, and that I felt I could sleep then. So
just that safety, you're not nervously twitching every time you hear a sound?
No.
Because you've got that?
I've got that, but I still had to sleep on the floor. I didn't have no plates, no pots, no pans, no food. I still had to go out and steal milk and bread and eggs and yogurts, to feed myself.
And then from there, of course, it's not a fantastic setup you've got there. You found work after that? Or?
No, it got worse. I got into drug dealing, more crime, more violence. With the drug dealing, violence came quite bad. I would get often enough baseball bat, go around people who didn't pay their bills, give them a good hiding, stuff like that. To the point where it got so bad, and then my addiction grew and grew. When
you're in that situation, how much are you in control and aware of what you're doing is wrong, or do you just think this is can you think back with a clear head now?
It's an escape. I can think back with a clear head now, but at that time, it was escaping what was happening out there.
It was a necessary evil, you had no choice. Yeah. Well, that's how it felt.
Yeah. The nightmares I would have at night, my father coming into the room to beat me, or me being locked in a cellar for 2 or 3 hours a day, screaming at the top of my voice, wanting to get out, and I couldn't.
So how did you get out? How did you get out of that sort of spiral, out of that world?
Well, it took a lot of things to happen for me to get out of that. Going to prison was the biggest thing.
How old were you when you went to prison?
I was 1984. I went to prison. I was 23.
Okay.
I got sent to a long-term prison in Featherstone in Wolverhampton, which you got to be doing 5 and over, and I was only doing 2 years. So I was amongst some very serious criminals. And I remember going in, my first day, I cried like a baby, you know, absolutely petrified. You know, all the stories you hear about boys being raped, this, that, and the other, and it scared me. And I met a lifer called George. Played table tennis against him, and I'm very competitive, and I beat him.
You surprise me when you say you're competitive. I wouldn't have guessed that. Vinny.
And the guys kind of looked at me when I beat him and thought, well, are you mad?
Well, no one beats George and gets away with it.
No.
Okay.
So, but George came up to me, shook my hand and said, wow, fantastic game. And we played every day. And did that gave you sort of newfound respect? Newfound respect within George. And George took me under his wing and looked after me. And then 6 months down the line, I got a chance of parole. But to get that parole, you have to put in the reasons why you want to get parole. And George wrote it all up for me, made a massive impact on me getting parole. Came back to the prison cell and went to George's room and said, I've got parole. And I remember George coming up to me and slapping me across the face.
Okay.
And this is what his words to me said, if you ever come back here again, I would kill you.
Wow, there's an incentive.
And he said, this place is not for you. And that was one of the reasons why helped me turn my life around.
And was George in there for life, sorry, did you say?
Yes. When I got there, he'd already done 13 years.
Oh, wow, okay. So, well, that is going to start turning your life around a little bit. What happened when you got out of prison?
When I came out of prison, trying to find a job was...
And where did you come to? Did you go back to Nottingham?
I went back to Nottingham, and it wasn't very easy because I couldn't get a job. Nobody wants to take on an ex-con. So I got back into the drug dealing and selling and met my partner, and we got married, had 2 kids. I was still on and off using the drugs, and my partner turned around to me one day and said, look, this has got to stop, or you're going to lose me and the kids.
Well, we're running out of time, Vinny. We've got loads more to talk about, and we will talk about after the break.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated to find out when your obsessive cleanliness came in, whether it was in prison, whether it was before that or slightly after. We'll talk about that after the break. We'll talk about the work you've done with the Archer Project here in Sheffield as well, and about your role now. You must be the scariest personal trainer there is. I'm feeling frightened already. More of this with Vinny straight after the break. Stay tuned.